February 11th, 1979. A sweltering morning in Tehran, Iran. The city pulses with defiance, its streets choked with millions chanting for freedom. Bazaars are shuttered, universities silent, but the air hums with the roar of a nation on the brink. For months, protests have rocked the capital, led by students, clerics, and workers united against a king who once seemed untouchable. At the heart of the storm is a 78-year-old exiled cleric, Ruhollah Khomeini, whose voice, carried on smuggled cassette tapes, has ignited a firestorm. Just days ago, he returned from Paris, greeted by millions as a savior. Today, the monarchy of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, a 2,500-year-old institution, teeters on collapse. By nightfall, the Shah's regime will fall, and Iran will be reborn as an Islamic republic. A seismic shift that will reshape the Middle East and the world. This is no ordinary day. It's a moment that will topple a dynasty, birth a theocracy, and spark global ripples still felt today. Welcome to Vestige Files, where we unearth the pivotal moments that shaped history. This is the story of the Iranian Revolution, a tale of faith, fury, and a nation's quest for its soul. To understand the Iranian Revolution, we must rewind to the early 20th century, when Iran was a land of ancient pride and modern strife. For centuries, it was Persia, a cradle of civilization, its poets like Rumi, and empires like the Safavids, weaving a rich cultural tapestry. By 1900, it was a weakened state, caught between imperial powers, Britain and Russia, vying for its oil and strategic position. In 1925, Reza Shah Pahlavi, a military officer, seized power, founding the Pahlavi dynasty. He modernized Iran, building railways and schools, but ruled with an iron fist, alienating clerics by banning veils and enforcing Western dress. In 1941, Allied forces ousted him for pro-German leanings, placing his 21-year-old son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, on the peacock throne. The young Shah inherited a nation of contrasts, a devout Shia Muslim majority, a growing urban elite, and a rural poor scraping by. Iran's oil, discovered in 1908, made it a geopolitical prize. By the 1950s, the Shah's rule was shaky. His push for Western-style modernization, skyscrapers, cinemas, and women's rights clashed with traditional values. In 1951, Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, a nationalist, nationalized Iran's oil industry, defying Britain and earning mass support. The Shah, backed by the US and Britain, fled briefly in 1953 when Mossadegh challenged his power. A CIA-orchestrated coup ousted Mossadegh, restoring the Shah and cementing his reliance on Western powers. For many Iranians, it was a betrayal, sowing distrust of both the Shah and his American allies. By the 1960s, the Shah's ambitions soared. Flushed with oil wealth after OPEC's rise, he launched the White Revolution in 1963, a sweeping reform program. Land was redistributed from feudal lords to peasants, women gained voting rights, and literacy programs spread. But the reforms came at a cost. The Shah's modernization alienated the clergy, who saw secular schools and unveiled women as a tax on Islam. His land reforms angered wealthy landowners, while peasants found the changes too slow. The Bazaris, merchants of Iran's bustling markets, resented new taxes and competition from Western imports. Meanwhile, the Shah's secret police, Savak, crushed dissent, jailing and torturing thousands. By 1970, Iran's cities gleamed with oil-funded progress, but rural villages languished, and a generation of students, radicalized by Marxist and Islamist ideas, seethed under censorship. Enter Ruhollah Khomeini, the revolution's towering figure. Born in 1902 in Khomeini, a small town, he rose as a Shia cleric, revered for his scholarship and asceticism. By the 1960s, Khomeini was a senior Ayatollah, his black turban marking descent from the Prophet Mohammad. In 1963, he denounced the Shah's White Revolution as a sellout to the West, accusing him of eroding Iran's Islamic identity. Arrested and exiled in 1964, first to Turkey, then Iraq, Khomeini refused to fade. From Najaf, he preached via smuggled tapes, his gravelly voice urging Iranians to resist. His vision was radical, an Islamic government led by clerics free from foreign influence. By 1978, his message resonated with a nation tired of the Shah's opulence. His $100 million coronation in 1967, while millions lived in poverty, was a glaring symbol. Other voices joined the chorus. Ali Shariati, a sociologist and intellectual, electrified students with his blend of Islam and revolutionary socialism, framing Shia martyrdom as a call to resist tyranny. Mehdi Bazargan, a moderate Islamist, led the freedom movement, advocating democracy within an Islamic framework. Leftists like the Tuda Party and Marxist guerrillas like the Mojahedin-e-Khalq added ideological fuel, dreaming of a socialist Iran. The Shah, oblivious, celebrated 2,500 years of Persian monarchy in 1971 with a lavish party at Persepolis, serving peacock and champagne to foreign dignitaries while Iranians watched in disgust. By 1978, Iran was a tinderbox. Oil wealth had widened inequality, Savak's terror silenced critics, and Khomeini's voice grew louder from exile. The spark came in January 1978, when a government newspaper published an article slandering Khomeini as a British agent and fraud. Outrage erupted in Qom, Iran's religious heartland. Seminary students protested, chanting Khomeini's name. Police fired on the crowd, killing at least 6, a massacre that shocked the nation. Shia tradition calls for mourning 40 days after a death, and the killings triggered a cycle of protests. Every 40 days, new demonstrations flared, each met with bullets, fueling more martyrs and more marches. By spring, protests spread to Tehran, Tabriz, and Isfahan, with workers, students, and clerics uniting. The Shah, rattled, alternated between concessions and crackdowns, firing officials and promising reforms while unleashing Savak. September 8, 1978, known as Black Friday, marked a turning point. In Tehran's Jaleh Square, thousands gathered to protest martial law. Troops opened fire, killing dozens. Estimates range from 88 to hundreds. The bloodshed galvanized the nation. Strikes crippled the economy, especially in the oil fields, where workers walked out, slashing Iran's main revenue. The Shah's allies, America, Britain, Israel, urged restraint, but President Jimmy Carter's mixed signals confused him. Carter praised the Shah as a great leader, but pushed human rights, emboldening protesters. By October, Khomeini's tapes flooded Iran, his calls for a general strike resonating. The Shah, desperate, pressured Iraq to expel Khomeini. In October 1978, Khomeini relocated to Paris, where access to Western media amplified his voice globally. The revolution gained momentum. In November, Tehran burned as protesters torched banks and cinemas, symbols of Western influence. The Shah declared martial law, but his army, 400,000 strong, began to fracture. Conscripts, often poor villagers, hesitated to shoot their own people. Khomeini from Paris declared the Shah's regime satanic and called for an Islamic republic, a concept vague yet intoxicating. His charisma united unlikely allies. Clerics dreaming of theocracy, students craving democracy, workers seeking justice, and Marxists envisioning revolution. The coalition was fragile, bound by hatred of the Shah, not a shared vision. On December 10th and 11th, 1978, during the Shia holy month of Muharram, thousands marched in Tehran and other cities, chanting, "Death to the Shah." The processions, honoring the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, fused religious fervor with revolutionary zeal, one of the largest uprisings in history. The Shah's regime was crumbling. In January 1979, he appointed Shapur Bakhtiar, a moderate opposition leader, as prime minister, hoping to save the monarchy. Bakhtiar freed political prisoners and curbed Savak, but it was too late. On January 16, 1979, the Shah fled Iran, officially for a vacation in Egypt, never to return. Crowds tore down his statues, dancing in the streets. Khomeini's return was the revolution's crescendo. On February 1st, 1979, he landed in Tehran aboard a chartered Air France jet, greeted by 3 million people. His gaunt face and black robes electrified the crowd. He refused to negotiate with Bakhtiar, declaring his government illegitimate. Khomeini settled in a school in Tehran's Pahlavi district, issuing edicts like a shadow ruler. The final blow came on February 9th to 11th, when Air Force cadets mutinied, joining revolutionaries. Street battles erupted as pro-Khomeini militias clashed with the Shah's Imperial Guard. On February 11th, the army declared neutrality and Bakhtiar fled. By evening, state radio announced the monarchy's fall. The revolution had won, but at a cost. Thousands dead, a nation divided, and a future uncertain. The Iranian Revolution ended the Pahlavi dynasty, but it birthed a new struggle. On February 11th, 1979, Iran became an Islamic republic under Khomeini's leadership. A March referendum, with 98% approving, cemented the shift. Though critics claim voter intimidation, Khomeini's vision, Velayat-e Faqih, or rule by Islamic jurists, placed him as supreme leader, a cleric above elected officials. The new constitution, ratified in December 1979, blended theocracy with limited democracy, alienating secular allies like Bazargan, who resigned as provisional prime minister. The revolution's coalition fractured. Leftists, nationalists, and moderates, who'd fought alongside Khomeini, faced purges. By 1981, the Mojahedin-e-Khalq waged armed resistance, triggering brutal crackdowns. Thousands were executed, including students and intellectuals, as Khomeini consolidated power. The revolution's human toll was immense. Families like the Hassanis in Tehran saw triumph turn to tragedy. A son killed in protests was mourned as a martyr, but his sister, a leftist, was jailed by the new regime. In rural Khorasan, farmers who cheered the Shah's fall faced land disputes as clerics seized estates. Women who'd marched in millions were divided. Some embraced the mandatory hijab as a return to faith. Others, like student activist Parvaneh Forouhar, saw it as oppression. Forouhar's family paid dearly. Her parents, opposition leaders, were murdered in 1998 by regime agents. Yet resilience shone through. Bazaris like Ahmad Reza, who'd funded strikes, adapted to the new order, navigating sanctions to keep trade alive. The revolution reshaped Iran's place in the world. The November 1979 U.S. Embassy hostage crisis, where students seized 52 Americans for 444 days, severed ties with Washington, branding Iran a pariah. Khomeini's call to export the revolution alarmed neighbors, sparking the Iran-Iraq War, 1980 to 1988, a brutal conflict that killed over 500,000 and devastated Iran's economy. Oil production plummeted under sanctions, and inflation soared, hitting the poor hardest. Yet the Islamic Republic endured, its anti-Western stance resonating with millions across the Muslim world. By Khomeini's death in 1989, Iran was a regional power, its influence spreading through groups like Hezbollah. The revolution's legacy is complex. It ended monarchy and foreign dominance, fulfilling dreams of sovereignty. Iran's literacy rate rose from 50% in 1979 to 85% by 2000, and women entered universities in droves, though under strict codes. But theocracy stifled dissent, and economic woes fueled unrest, from 1999 student protests to 2022's Mahsa Amini uprising. The revolution inspired Islamist movements globally, from Lebanon to Afghanistan, but also hardened Western policies, feeding decades of tension. Iran's youth, born after 1979, grapple with its paradox, a revolution that promised freedom but delivered control. The Iranian Revolution was a cry for justice that echoed beyond its borders. Khomeini, the austere cleric who toppled a king, became both hero and villain, his vision uniting a nation but dividing its soul. Was the revolution a triumph of faith over tyranny, or a dream betrayed by its own ideals? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this dive into Iran's upheaval moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to Vestige Files, and ring the bell for more stories of history's turning points.